My name is Michael Alcorn. I've been a crew member with Trader Joe's for almost 9 years. Last year, in July of 2022, my store in Hadley, Massachusetts became the first to unionize. This video is an opportunity for me and my crew members to express what we've experienced in the last year with this union since the campaign and since they are representing us at the negotiating table. We've all contributed to the final edit of this so that we could clearly get our experience across to the audience. All right, just to make one thing clear, none of us made this video. No, Trader Joe's didn't tell us to make this video. We're all doing this on our own. We're not getting paid to make this video. This is our genuine story and perspective, and we have come together to share this with everyone. And we can all agree that that's true.
Yeah.
Of course.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes. Trader Joe's was not involved at all, and I know that I made a point of not even letting any of the mates know that we were doing this so that they wouldn't have any culpability.
Right,
Sure, yeah,
right.
we don't talk to them about it.
Yeah, yeah. No, I'm not being paid or forced to be here. It's my opinion, and it's valid.
Yeah, definitely no one's in the know on it. This was something that we needed to do. We needed to share our side of the story. My big thing was keeping it clean, and our number one core value at our job is integrity, and I feel like we have kept that side of the core value. So,
And obviously the union will say that we're union busting as workers, which they've said before, and say that we're anti-union, which they've also said from the beginning to each of us when we voiced doubts in this particular union. So when someone said we're anti-union, I know a lot of us were like, wait, no, let's talk about this, what's going on right here. How did that make you feel, being called anti-union?
My great Uncle Bob was so proud of unionizing his machine shop, and it needed to be unionized. You know, this was back in the 30s, and they weren't being treated well, and he was so proud of it, and it was really special what he did. It wasn't the 30s; it might have been the 50s, but still, you know. And so that's where I come into understanding how important unions are, and having that voice and that collective voice. But I have said from the very beginning, not this union, not this store.
Right. Similar for me, my aunt who's pushing 90, she was a nurse anesthetist, and she organized all those years ago a nurses union, and it was needed. And so there's that, but like Gail says, not this union, not this store.
So finally, we get to share our side of the story when it comes to the unionization of our store at Trader Joe's in Hadley, Massachusetts. First, I think we should talk about our experience at Trader Joe's before the union and how we felt like they treated us as crew members. So, Danny, I'd love to hear your perspective on that and how you felt.
I started at Trader Joe's almost 3 years ago, and it was during the pandemic, and where I was working had closed down indefinitely, and I decided I want to work where I think I could have a lot of fun and be around upbeat, positive people, environment, even though it was the middle of a pandemic. So I applied, and they hired me. And I can honestly say I had never worked for a big company. I'd always worked for small mom and pop businesses. So it was different. It was different having so many coworkers, punching a time clock. But I was actually excited to come to work every day. And everybody accepted me really quickly. It felt like I had already been there for years. And I didn't know about the benefits, I didn't know anything. It was literally, where could I have a decent time and just be myself and earn a living? And sitting through the training and seeing what my benefits were, I was impressed and shocked and like, wow, I had no idea. So it's been good. It had been good. And everybody was kind and helpful and thoughtful, and it was everything I could have hoped it could be.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Nancy, what about you?
I have been at Trader Joe's for, it'll be 12 years in September 6th, as a matter of fact. And when I was hired at Trader Joe's, jobs were hard to come by. I had worked at a little grocery store maybe for a month. And then Trader Joe's called me, and I was very excited to go there. And so grateful that they hired me, and still grateful that I work for such an awesome company. As Danny said, everybody was welcoming. They treated you like a brother or sister, and it was one big happy family, was being the key word.
Yep. And Gail, how was your experience before the union?
I started at Trader Joe's in California and then transferred here. And it was fun to see the similarities between that family feeling in the store. I definitely felt like I was leaving a family in California, but then I came into a new family. And it was a really good place to work, and it was challenging in a really good way, and I just felt like I was growing. And there were days when I was smiling walking into work, and I would just sort of laugh at myself because it's thinking, you're going to work and yet you're smiling. And so it used to be really special, and we used to really take care of each other in a really deep sense of the word.
My favorite thing is just seeing my buddies at work every day. I think Gail once said that it was like going to summer camp where all your friends were still there. You'd go on vacation and come back and they were there, and they generally cared. They care about you.
Yeah, definitely. I know for me, I always felt like Trader Joe's just had a good reputation, obviously, for that friendly community culture. And when I took the job at Trader Joe's, it was just instantaneous. I just felt so at ease, and like I've got so much support around me and crew members. It felt like a cool job. And then like when I got my first review, I got all this positive feedback for things I wasn't even expecting, because in previous work experience, my review would be kind of a minimal description of what I've contributed. But at Trader Joe's, it was like very clear, we really like that you're bringing this to the table, and we really appreciate that. And that just made it so much more fun for me to work there. And obviously the people, because everybody tends to be happy when you're getting that positive reinforcement and you're being supported and engaging with the customers. So I thought it was really fun. And then the flexibility of the schedules, like you said, it's for a time in my life I was working the night shifts. And then for a time in my life I'm working the morning shifts, and sometimes I worked in between. It just depended on what I wanted to be doing outside of work. And then when you get home, you don't have to think about it, which was just so great. And that's one of the things I think a lot of us worried about with the union campaign was, how is this going to impact our lives once we leave the store? So I think that was a big part of our concern, or one of the main concerns we had.
I like how Captain and the mates, at least for me, have always been available. When my dad passed unexpectedly, 3 o'clock in the morning, I'm texting a manager and just saying this happened, and I didn't have to worry about anything. And they all talked with each other, and everything was taken care of for me. I didn't have to worry about being there to work in a couple of days or anything. And I like that if I have any issue of any kind, being able to openly talk and be listened to, and I feel heard, and I appreciate that support
Yeah,
a lot.
that's
It
awesome.
was pretty awesome how attainable and reachable and understanding our management staff is,
Yes.
which is nothing like anywhere I've ever worked. You don't have numbers, phone numbers to be able to communicate outside of work if something comes up, and the fact that that exists and they're willing to be able to do that for you speaks volumes.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that with the union campaign, there were some of us who mentioned concern about how is this going to impact that relationship we had with our mates in the store, which were pretty open relationships, in many ways we could talk to them about anything, they would listen to us. And we were worried that this might change things because there might be certain conversations we won't be able to have because there might be rules in place. And the union kept saying, that's silly union busting talk. That would never happen. Why would we create a wedge between you and the leadership? But they were very clearly creating that from the beginning with the union campaign when they were saying, you can't talk to your friend who's a mate about this. They're not allowed to be talking about it. That's union busting and that's illegal, which is not true. But they immediately caused a wedge, or wanted to cause a wedge between us and the mates, and it sucked, and they still do that. And now we unfortunately have coworkers who come in after the campaign and are automatically in this wedged position against the leadership and distrust without even giving them the opportunity to prove, like, you have no idea, like, Trader Joe's has been awesome, and right now there's just this really awkward, wedge between us. I don't know how else to explain it.
Yeah. It's like turbulence.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One more thing about what I like about Trader Joe's is living in California, I shopped at Trader Joe's, of course, and working at Trader Joe's is a badge of honor. It's like when the questions come up about what do you do? And it's like I always smile and say, I work at Trader Joe's. Yeah. And then they go, ooh. And then they tell you what was discontinued that makes them sad. But other than that,
Yeah, I know. It's true.
You become their hero
Yeah.
Yes, it's true.
by working at a grocery store.
Right.
Exactly.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
Danny, what was your experience coming into Trader Joe's in the middle of the pandemic? And how did you feel like the company was taking care of us?
I feel like the company exceeded expectations. And then when the mask mandates went away, I still kept my mask on, and nobody gave me grief for keeping my mask on. And I took it off when I was ready. And I think the company was very supportive of that. Or I'd see other coworkers having some anxiety issues, and they weren't penalized for leaving or needing to go home for the rest of the day. And again, I was just always surprised and amazed at how the level of humanity for the company had for all of us was exceeded expectations for sure. Yeah.
Gil, what about you?
I worked through the pandemic every day, and I was really proud to be at Trader Joe's because all of the customers that were shopping there said, it's the only place I'm shopping now because it's the place I feel the safest. And I felt that too. I felt like Trader Joe's did everything they could to keep us safe and reward us for it too. We got hazard pay. They bumped up our discount to 20%. I mean, it was amazing in those times. And we felt heard, and one of the mates one time said, if it's too much for you during the day and you don't feel like making small talk at the register, it's okay. You can just greet your customers nicely and you don't have to talk because we're all in this together, and it's tough for all of us.
I feel that through the pandemic, It was pretty awesome that we could come to work and we could feel safe. But then there were a lot of people that, you know, within their own right, did not feel comfortable, decided to stay home. And, you know, there's nothing wrong with that. They were not within their comfortability level to come to work. But what I found very interesting is once mask mandates were removed and once people were called back to work, everybody did come back to work. But what I came to realize is that all of those people, the majority of those people, were the ones that decided to spark up this union. And that kind of, it threw me in a whirlwind, because they were talking about all these things that they didn't experience. And then to come back to work and put all these ideas into people's heads, where my experience through the pandemic was positive. And then to have, you know, almost a tidal wave of people coming back that didn't work, to spin it in the opposite direction.
Yeah, and an interesting point was when I talked to the union organizers, like right before the petition, and actually after they released that video saying Trader Joe's didn't take care of us during the pandemic, I said, I don't feel like that really represents my experience working through the pandemic, and I know my coworkers too would agree. And they just said, well, some of your coworkers felt that way, and don't you respect their opinions? And it was like, yes, of course, but like, can't we all talk about this as a group? Can't we have an equal representation here? If we're putting out this message to the media about our workplace, shouldn't we all have a say? And that's sort of from the beginning, they were like, no, we don't need it. We don't need all of your opinions. We've got a few, and we respect their opinions. Yours is maybe less important or doesn't fit our narrative, so we're going to leave that one out. That was the response we got from the beginning, and it's continued that way. You just kind of have to go along, or you don't respect your coworkers. But who's respecting our perspectives?
True.
It's a shame.
It is a shame. When did you first hear about the union campaign, Gail?
I first heard about the union campaign the day before the papers dropped. One of the organizers, who we had sort of a mutual respect, felt it was important for me to know that this was happening, even though I hadn't been contacted before that and had no chance to say anything of how I felt before that. And so they saw me outside of work and said, you know, I just want you to know that this is happening because I didn't want you to be surprised by it. And the papers dropped the next day.
That's a surprise.
I was surprised. That's how I found out about it.
Yeah.
And yes, I was really disappointed by that, because it was, you know, somebody that I trusted and respected, and you think that you have that family thing. You think that you have that mutual respect. And I felt totally disrespected.
Yeah.
And my opinion did not matter.
Yeah. And betrayed. And a lot of our coworkers who aren't even here felt the same way. And yet the organizers are still out in the public saying, you know, we had 51, they're claiming, we had 51% of the store, and Trader Joe's should have just accepted this union without a vote. And it's just it's so contradictory to their messaging that they support us, want to represent all of us and make our lives better. It really doesn't seem to include us. What about you, Danny? When was the first time you heard about it?
I was approached relatively early on, like at least a couple of weeks before, maybe more. I'm a little fuzzy on the timing of things, and I still feel in my gut, you can't talk about this, you can't talk about it, you're gonna get fired, you could get fired, we could get fired for even thinking about this or mentioning this. And so I still have that worry in my gut sitting here, even bringing it up. And there was the whole if we don't sit at the table, right, then the company can take these things away from us. And at first I was like, oh my word, you're right, they could, and what do we do, and whatnot. And it was right after the papers dropped that I started talking about it with other coworkers and reading more and researching more. I was warned of union busting, and you can't trust anybody, you can't trust any of the managers because they're just going to do this union busting. Let me send you videos on union busting to watch and be prepared for when this happens, and what you can say or do to not get caught up in the union busting and to believe the lies that they're going to say. And it was really overwhelming, definitely overwhelming, and it ultimately just did not sit right in my gut about thinking of my own experiences that I had, and then hearing the things that they were having issues with. They just didn't jive.
And they quickly, just to interject, that sort of thinking that we all had independently was quickly turned into union busting, and they
Right.
were telling people that we were thinking that because Trader Joe's was feeding us this information,
Right.
which just wasn't happening. I
Right.
mean, I talked to people I knew who were involved in negotiations and unions, and they said, this is bargaining, you got to give a little to get a little, and vice versa. And I don't think any of us really knew too much about how the negotiations go for
Right.
unions, so we were all trying to figure this information out for ourselves. But it was so quickly turned against us, and the union was just like, no, this is union busting from Trader Joe's. And one of the union organizers I talked to, I said, we're really not happy about the video. I don't feel represented there, and I think you should have included everybody before you did that video. And they said, well, I'm really sorry about that, and just so you know, Trader Joe's is going to be union busting. I just wanted to prepare you for that. So they were laying all this groundwork to pretty much tell people to stop listening and stop questioning the union.
That's how I felt. And when I did start asking some of the organizers questions, we were all part, those that they believed were 100% for and with the union, we were all part of this like texting tree, and there'd be videos and information and updates and whatnot. And they also talked about it, this union is for all of us, where it's for all of us. And when it really became evident that I was asking questions that made them uncomfortable, but were pertinent, I quickly was deleted from the phone messaging. So I knew nothing that was going on. And when I brought it up to one of the organizers, I was told that, oh, it must have happened by accident. We were just updating things, and I guess you were dropped accidentally. I was like, oh, all right. And from then on, I've no information other than what's gone up in the break room on the board.
And they dropped you from that group chat before the vote or after the vote?
Before the vote.
Before the vote.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. Way before the vote. So we're still kind of in the dark. And, there's been nothing for 4 months?
Yeah.
No, nothing.
And they never take responsibility for any
Right.
of it. They always deflect to Trader Joe's. Right. And even the union that they were working with, that they claimed they weren't working with, they blamed them for for not accepting our bonus. They said, oh, they were supposed to send in that paperwork, so we're dropping that union. And it's like, wait, I thought you guys were running this, and we all have a voice, and this is an independent union. There was just a lot of that contradiction going on. Nancy, when did you first hear about the union campaign? Or how?
I don't quite remember what month it was, but I got a phone call, which the person had asked me if it would be okay that they had something to discuss with me. And that person called me, and I was not interested from the get-go. Trader Joe's is a fabulous company. I don't want to pay somebody union dues to do the same job that I've been doing for the past 12 years.
Mm-hmm.
Why?
Mm-hmm. When you asked questions to the union organizers, what sorts of answers did you get, or did you get answers that you felt were real answers to your questions? I know for me it was like, how much are union dues going to cost? And they would kind of just pick a number at random. Okay, how much are the lawyers going to cost? It's donated help, they would say. So they were constantly, all their answers were pretty much like, this isn't going to cost us anything, and it's just going to work. How are you going to be able to negotiate for these things? How are you going to get us something better if we have the highest wages in the industry? We're just going to make it happen. So there wasn't a lot of fact or anything to hold on to make you really feel confident in these people. Did you have similar experiences?
I got nervous when I heard, when that question was asked, who's going to do the bargaining, who's going to be, doing this for all of us. And sometimes it would be, well, we all are, or you all are. And one of the responses from one of the organizers was, well, I read a book, and I think we'll do this, we can do this. And then I got really nervous. I did. Got really nervous, like, wow, okay, this doesn't seem okay. Doesn't seem like it's going to work in my favor or my benefit, for my benefit.
Right. And I think at that point, a lot of us had started to distrust this union and not really have a lot of faith in it. And we wanted to get our coworkers talking about it. But then they wouldn't talk about it because they've been told by the union organizers, you might get fired and you can't talk about this at work, and the management shouldn't even say the word union or else they're breaking the law. So it was really hard for us to even try to bring these questions to our friends, our coworkers, so we could kind of share in this decision-making process of what would be best for us. The union made that really hard.
I think just the fact that, they would tell me, you can't bring this up, you'll risk getting fired or me getting fired, that I think that's intimidation, right?
I do too.
Because it's keeping you, it's silencing you, and being fearful for maintaining your job. I didn't like that. Another coworker has been asked, well, how many hours are you working? How many days are you here? Or even me asking if I'm on the clock for something. Why? You're not a manager. You're not in charge of my schedule or my log during the day. Why do you need to know if I'm on the clock or not? What is that? I don't know. Those all feel weird.
Yeah, that does sound weird. And I know that recently we've had new coworkers, younger coworkers coming into the store who might not know anything about the union, and they're being called at home by the union to kind of join the ranks. So they're not even given an opportunity to come into the workplace and just enjoy it for a while before they're getting calls from the union, the same union who claimed, we're not going to have access to your personal information. Trader Joe's they're making that up, that we're going to have access to your personal information. We're not going to have access to that. Only the lawyers will have access to that. But that's not true, because they're calling our coworkers after a few days of them starting within the store. So it's, I think that's not anything any of us had to deal with before there was a union being called at home about work when you're not on the clock.
Yeah.
So now that the union's in place, how involved do we feel, or how in the loop do we feel about what the union is doing at the bargaining table on our behalf? Are they? I mean, I know
How
they're not
involved?
keeping us very
No, not at all.
informed.
Not at all. I don't feel like I'm included in anything that's going on. It's like, this is what's going on, just sit down, shut up, and like it. Well, I'm sorry,
Right.
you know?
And have you heard about? And when you heard about what was going on. Were you happy with what you heard about what the union was doing at negotiations? Did you feel like they were actively working to make our wages and benefits better?
No, I do not. No, not at all.
I know that a few of us went to the bargaining in February because we were really upset that the union had rejected our free gift from the company, 401k bonus, even though the collective had voted to accept it. And the union had always said that they're going to represent everybody. Everybody has a seat at the table. And they went into negotiations and somehow rejected our 401k bonus gift from the company. So as a result of that, we were upset at the lost money. So we decided to go to bargaining ourselves after the president had posted something saying, Trader Joe's is spinning what's going on in the bargaining sessions. We need more eyes in the room. So we went. And I know, were you at the first one with me, Gail?
Yes.
Yes?
Yeah.
Yes. I went a day with Les and a day with Gail.
The next day, Gail joined us.
Yeah. And what did you experience there?
Well, like you, I was curious about what was really happening, because it seemed as though when Trader Joe's would post, you know, from the lawyers what was happening in the bargaining sessions, it was very different from what the union was saying. And it seemed as though anything that the union posted was very negative and very inflammatory. And there were such disparities that I thought maybe we should go sit in on the negotiations. And so we sat down and we were waiting for everybody to collect themselves. The Trader Joe's lawyers weren't there yet. And we were told that we could not be there. And this is supposed to be our union. And they enforced that. They always said, this is our union. This is all of us together, and we're all going to make the decisions. And they had encouraged people to come to the bargaining sessions, and they wanted more people in the bargaining sessions. And so when you and I went, we sat quietly, and we were asked to leave. And we pointed out that they had asked us to be there, that, you know, we were crew members and we were part of this. And they said, no, you can't stay. And their lawyer was rude and said that we had to leave and that they were going to call the hotel security. And so we remained quietly sitting, waiting for the negotiations to start. And they did call hotel security, and we were escorted out of our union's bargaining session.
Right. For the collective bargaining unit that we will be under.
Yes.
And that's what we said. We're part of this collective bargaining unit. We can't see what you guys are doing in this room. And at that second session we went to, they said, no, you can't see it anymore. The first one, they let us observe, which we did. But somehow something had changed between then and the second session, because they were saying anybody can come in the first session. Then when we tried to go that second time, the president said, no, I decide who's on the bargaining committee now. And also that Trader Joe's has not agreed we can broadcast these negotiations, so you can't be here, which was really odd, because we said, we're here. We don't need to watch a broadcast.
If I may piggyback on that, also, when the negotiations first started happening, Trader Joe's union and Trader Joe's company agreed that there would not be any Zoom meetings because they didn't know what was going to happen to people, you know, with people that were viewing the Zoom meetings. Didn't want those private meetings to get out into the public. And then fast forward, and the Trader Joe's union decided to show up, and multiple people that are in the leader positions in the union were not present physically, but wanted to attend through a Zoom meeting.
We've seen this union and how they act and what they say on social media. We know exactly what this union would do with any broadcasted negotiations. They would fit it into their narrative and put it out there in the wrong light, misrepresent it, just like they've misrepresented everything. And so we understand that. They think we don't recognize that. And they're like, oh, it's just Trader Joe's trying to cover their backs. No, we see that too, and we don't want you misrepresenting what's going on in that room either. And I certainly wouldn't want them broadcasting it. We should show up. And that's what we tried to do. And we even said, Gail and I and Les, after the first bargaining session we wrote up a statement just saying what we saw to kind of fill in that gray area that we were all confused about with the different stories. And we even said, we think that everybody in this store, if they can make the time, should go see it for yourselves. So they didn't even have to take our word for it. We said in that statement, go see it for yourselves. And nobody really did. And then they told us, no, don't come,
Right,
never
yeah.
mind. But I mean, we were trying to be as honest and open as possible, and I think that's one of the differences between our stance throughout this whole thing is we were open and honest with our perspective about things from the beginning. We weren't silenced, we weren't trying to hide it, we weren't trying to play any games with anybody. But this union and a lot of its organizers has deliberately tried to play games and not talk to certain people and hide things in the secrecy. It's just seems so unnecessary. Why can't you have a union that's open and honest? Doesn't make any sense. So, what are your hopes for our store as we go through this union process and as we move forward? What are your hopes for where we can go from here, Les?
I would love to find common ground if that's possible. I don't know if it is possible. I don't know if they will ever want the common ground or if they just want their focus to be the only reality that's surrounding us.
It'd be hard to find common ground, I think we can all agree, with their tactics and their social media campaign. You know, we could join a union with our coworkers and friends if whoever's leading this thing and influencing it wasn't doing this social media smear campaign on Trader Joe's. None of us will find common ground with that. It's unnecessary, it's unfair, it doesn't represent our workplace. So that's like number one, and I know that they won't give that up. So it feels like there's no hope for us to see eye to eye or have a middle ground.
Well, it feels as though our goals are very different now. It feels as though the union wants to have a national, like Trader Joe's union wants to have a national presence, and they're really enjoying the publicity, and they want to be the stars of, you know, the first store to unionize Trader Joe's, and that's not the same as our goals. We want our store to be wonderful, and we always have.
Right.
And I don't feel like they care about our store anymore. I don't. I feel like it's about them and about them getting publicity, and that it's not about the workers anymore, and yet that's what they said was important to them at the beginning.
Gail, it sounds like you're saying you just want our store back.
I would love our store back.
I would love them to be decertified.
I know that we've tried to hold them to account. I've called the NLRB to say, hey, like, we've got this union, and they've dropped people off of the group chat for voicing any concerns or not agreeing with what the union's doing. And they actually went to the bargaining, and after getting the approval from the collective bargaining unit to accept something, they rejected it. So they actually are not acting in good faith for us. And the NLRB just said they can do whatever they want. They're the union. Santa Claus can be in the bargaining committee, and they can do whatever they want. So throughout this whole process, it became pretty clear, like, the NLRB right now, or as it stands, doesn't really help people who are dealing with what we're dealing with. Like, this union is not representing us. This union has lost us money. Can you help us? Somebody's got to help us. I mean, they're supposed to stand for workers' rights to join or not join a union. And they certainly don't seem to have many resources or care much for the people who are saying this union is not good for us. And that puts us in a weird position where it's like, what can we do? It's unfortunate.
And with the claims that they make to the NLRB and the claims that they put out on social media, it's guilty until proven innocent. You know, they can say whatever they want, but there's no rebuttal. You know, they're just saying these half-truths and in some cases untruths, and there's nothing to balance it. And that's what's really frustrating. And that's what, I mean, they're tarnishing Trader Joe's reputation because they can say what they want, and there's not the other side. There's no other opinion than theirs. And that's been very frustrating to me too,
Yeah.
because of that whole sense of pride that I have in Trader Joe's. And yet they're trying to just slander Trader Joe's.
There's no accountability.
And they don't think about how that affects us in the store and our pride in our work. It's these sorts of tactics that have a big effect on our workplace and stress us out and feel unfair to us.
I think Gail was right. It's just for the notoriety. I don't know.
Notoriety?
Yes, that one. Just to, their claim to fame, so to speak.
Yeah, we all feel the same way.
Yeah.
And that's why we've gathered to voice the other side
Yeah.
and our opinions.
Yeah, it's about time we get our perspective out there to our customers. When they come to us and ask us about our experience and we share honestly what's gone on, they're surprised because they're not reading into things. They're not, and they rely on journalists to do that, but the journalists aren't doing that either. They're just going with the one side, which fits the narrative. But we have made our stance, and after we were kicked out of that bargaining session, we did go back and present the union and Trader Joe's lawyers with the petition for an open shop clause in any final bargaining agreement, which simply means that we will then have the choice whether we want to fund this union or not. So we'll see what happens with that. But the union didn't seem very happy with that. They snapped a picture of everybody who signed it, 20 of us who signed it, and then sent it out to the group to kind of make us look bad for saying we'd like to have a clause in this agreement if you can get one that will not force us to be a part of a union or pay dues to a union that we think is not acting in our best interest. So we'll see what comes from that. But that was what precipitated you being kicked off of the group chat,
Yes.
Yes.
Jared,
Yep,
because how
exactly.
dare you ask for an option in a contract
or have an opinion.
to pay or not to pay.
Yeah.
And I think that'll speak very clearly to any new employees as we move forward. Like, if they're not going to negotiate for that, then this is not democratic. This is not equal. This is not giving everybody the opportunity to make decisions for themselves.
You mentioned customers and talking to customers about the union, because customers will bring it up to all of us, and they'll usually start with, congratulations. And what's really interesting in talking to them when you say that, well, not everybody is in favor of the union, and they immediately say, yeah, I didn't understand it because I thought Trader Joe's was a really good place to work. And if you give them that one little tidbit of that we didn't all agree with the union, they immediately understand that it is unnecessary to have a union at Trader Joe's. So that's been an interesting observation too.
Yeah. So does anybody have any advice for other people who go through a union campaign similar to ours, whether in a Trader Joe's store or any other retail environment? What would you say to somebody going through the campaign like we did?
Get your side out and know that they're not alone in feeling that they don't feel it's necessary,
I know I feel like if I were giving somebody advice about this, I would say really make sure that everybody sees the facts and knows exactly what they're getting, because once it's voted in, it's really hard to hold it to account. And the NLRB is not on your side, so you're kind of on your own. You've got to fight back on your own if they're not representing you. So I would say really feel very clearly that they're promising you something real and they don't have any other agenda behind it and it's not seated in negativity. I would secure those things before you vote. Let the union go through and try to fight it if you don't agree
I feel
before
like
the vote.
it's imperative
Yeah.
beforehand,
Mm-hmm.
because after the fact, there's nothing you can do because it's already in place. And so your voice kind of gets lost if you're opposing.
Right.
So getting heard beforehand is hugely important.
It helps, but keep speaking up as we've done, because we do have rights, and you should fight for your rights as a worker, not to be stuck under some union that's infiltrated your workplace with negativity you think was unwarranted.
And the transparency. If they feel it so necessary to hide and have their secret chats and their, elected officials that were not elected by all of the store, what are they hiding, and why should we trust them? And therefore, so if a union's trying to come into your store, make sure that there's honesty and transparency, because you get stuck with what we're stuck with.
Yeah, and that actually, you mentioned the elected officials. I know there was a union meeting posted like a week after the union was certified, and they said there's a Zoom meeting. I think a lot of it was while we work in the morning shift, so none of us really could go. But Nancy, you attended this meeting.
I did attend that
and
meeting.
what happened in that meeting?
Both you and I.
That was,
Oh, Jared did too.
That was when they chose their captain and secretary and treasurer. And,
Yeah.
and they said that, in the next one that, like, they could say, if you're coming to the Zoom meeting and we say you have to wear crazy socks, you have to wear crazy socks.
They said that?
They did,
Oh yeah,
yeah. And I thought, okay.
Yeah.
the important things.
Yes.
So you didn't know going into that meeting, none of us knew. Maybe some people knew that did you know there would be an election for officers?
Nobody knew. Not a single
Nobody,
person.
not even the people in the group chat.
No, besides the organizers. I think that was their ulterior motive for it. It was supposed to be our first union meeting, and it was supposed to be kind of informational as to how things were going to proceed. It was, they read the declaration of the bylaws, and so it was starting to go, according to plan for the first union meeting. And then after the bylaws were read, they said, okay, well, now we're going to have a vote. It was very interesting because the president that got elected was uncontested. The secretary was not present, but supposedly knew that they were going to be nominated. And there was much discussion
Right.
between everybody that was participating. And one of the big things was, how can somebody be nominated for a position that isn't present in the meeting?
People voiced concern.
Yeah.
And
those
how
people
did
that
the
are
union
still
respond?
supporting the union had those questions in the meeting.
Mm-hmm.
And it was said, well, that's just the way it is. And that's how it's going to go. And it was very confusing.
And they claim that this is democratic,
Yeah.
Yeah.
everything about this union.
And then during the whole thing, do you remember, Nancy? They messed up, and then they had to go back and redo votes because it wasn't done the right way, because they didn't have the platform set up right.
Yep. Yeah.
It was very confusing
Very,
how we were supposed to proceed.
Yeah.
And how many people showed up to this first meeting?
I'm not
Slash
sure.
Less
unknown
than
election.
25.
Yeah. 20, 25 tops.
Yeah.
Mm.
So, like maybe a quarter of the store.
And how many people would you say said, like, questioned that there was going to be an election happening without notifying the rest of the collective bargaining unit? I think I heard there were like at least 5 people who said, yeah, shouldn't we like notify the store?
Yeah.
I read in their notes.
Yeah.
And they just ignored those.
And that amount of people in the meeting, I mean, if you want to look at numbers, unless you're a numbers guy, five people out of 25, I mean, that's 20% of the people that were in the union, that were in the meeting, that was questioning the way it was going.
Mm-hmm. And they weren't responding to that.
And other people just remained silent because they didn't know what to do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How many of the originally elected officers are still working at Trader Joe's?
That's an interesting story.
They all are.
No, they're not.
Secretary left soon after.
Oh, yes, of course. So we
And the
had,
treasurer doesn't work there either, the original treasurer.
right. So
Treasurer,
that
yeah,
brings us
no.
to the point,
Treasurer.
like,
Yeah,
big
so
one.
now we don't know.
we had at least 5 people leave right after the vote, some of whom made it very clear, like, yeah, I just wanted to vote in the union and then leave, which was kind of a shock to a lot of us, right?
Slap in the face.
Yeah. For what cause? And they don't have to deal with with what we're having to deal with. I wonder what they would be thinking if they were here now. Although I do think that there were at least 1 or 2 salts. People who kind of came to the store a couple months before
Yeah.
and took a position in the union, were voted into a position, and then soon after left.
Yeah. They were there just to convince the younger crowd that this was the right thing to do.
It felt.
Yeah, that's how it felt. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And the younger people, they don't have the year's experience. I mean, for some of them, it was their first job. So it's just not fair that they were dragged into that.
So why are we doing this video? Why do we think that this is important, or why does each person think that this is important? Gail?
Well, I think we've stated, and we've just felt as though we don't have a voice. And I feel like the union is getting their side out, and it's not true, and it's not fair, and it puts Trader Joe's in such a bad light that I want a voice. I want people to know that this is the truth, that, you know, we're muddling through the best we can, and that, you know, if I could reach another store that's being approached by a union and just have them think really hard about it and just think about what they have and what will they truly gain, and really ask those hard questions and keep asking them. Because I think that we were just,
Blindsided.
you know, yeah.
Yeah, it feels like we were like the lamb to the slaughter. You know, we were the guinea pig first store, and we didn't have much time to fight. Once a lot of us who were left out of all those months of organizing, so we had to try to rush to ask these questions. It was stressful. It created a lot of anxiety, and people were upset, as we should be if we think that something is going to be coming into our workplace and taking over. And so it's nice to finally have the opportunity to share our story and get it out there. And maybe we'll get less customers asking us, hey, how's it going? And they'll see, you know, it's not going so great. And that's just the reality, and everybody deserves to get their perspective out there, and the union can't just have the one narrative.
I agree 100% with what Gail said. I mean, hopefully it might even change somebody's mind within the store that is on the fence, or maybe has already thought that they wanted a union. I don't know, or to help another store, just to get it out there that you have a voice and you better speak up if it's coming to your door.
I think it's important for all of us to be able to be heard, as we haven't been given the chance. And I want there to be transparency, and I want others in other stores to know
there's more going on than what is actually being talked about by the union.
And there's more than just the 6 of us that feel this way.
There
Yep.
are.
Yes.
And we've heard people who were pro-union, and still are, some voice their concerns about this union and the way they're going about it. And when we post things in the break room, like Jared posted, they say, yeah, we don't like that they're doing it this way. So there is more support there. Other people see it too.
I think they're scared often to speak up. I've had some new folks say that they're too nervous to say that they don't agree or they don't. So hoping this will help them have a voice as well.
Yeah, and I think we really don't want to harass people at work with this stuff. We just don't. Even new people, like, we'll maybe say there's a union now, and we're hoping that maybe they'll see the union for what it is. But the reality is we want to come to work, have a good time, do what we always did, and we never want to submit our new coworkers to this. And we don't. So actually getting this video outside of work done is our way of maybe getting that message to them without having to bother them with it at work. They don't want to be getting all these messages from all these different people and feel this pressure.
Yeah.
They should just be able to come to work and do the job and enjoy all the things we've been able to enjoy. So that's a good point in making this. Les, what do you think?
I think, when you stated your opinion to the union people, they immediately brushed you off as, well, I'm sorry you feel that way, and pretty much you were, no longer on their Christmas card list. But they were very dismissive if you felt different than what they wanted you to feel. And having the video, being able to share how we feel, being able to share our fears, our love for our job. I mean, I still love my job. I mean, it feels like right now we're a fractured family in a way where, you see your stepbrother approaching and you just, you just wish your mom was here, But if people take anything from it, at the end of the day, Trader Joe's is a great place to work. And when people are genuinely having a good time, we are genuinely having a good time. And it's okay. It's part of our appeal,
Yeah, and we should all be able to focus on the good things and not create negativity. I think also I've seen the union organizers go out and say the union is here and it's here to stay. And I wanted to let them know that we're here and we're here to stay too. And they've got to get their act together. We will not submit to their tactics and their way of doing things and their lack of transparency. And we don't have to. And if by saying that they're trying to intimidate us into thinking we do, I just refuse. So I just say to them, we're here too.